Welcome to On the Table, a podcast about board games, card games, and tabletop war games.
Welcome back to episode 76 of the On the Table Gaming Podcast. We'll be talking this week, as often, about A Song of Ice and Fire, the miniatures game. And I'm really excited for our guest today, Ash Barker from Guerrilla Miniatures Game. He was one of the early content creators to jump on making A Song of Ice and Fire content, and he's really been a strong supporter of the game since its infancy. And he came on the podcast back in episode 13. And so it's great to have him back. And with that being said, Ash, welcome back to the podcast.
Hey, what's up, man? What's up, buddy?
It's been great. So, for those who missed it, actually, you were on the podcast last year or 2 years ago.
2018. I was sitting in my basement in like October, November, something like that. I remember.
Man, A Song of Ice and Fire, that whole landscape has changed so much.
Yeah, I mean, 2018 would have been what? Night's Watch was just coming out. I think Cool Mini had sent me the Night's Watch box, and we were like dinking around with it. And there was just really two factions besides them. Like it was a 3-faction game at that point with although to be fair, the Night's Watch box was probably the most functional starter set out of the box.
That came out and brutalized people
Yeah, 6 points swords or something. I don't feel bad about that at all. I don't feel bad about that change at all. People ate their shirts over that, and I was like, nah, that's fine. That's a 7-point unit at least.
So it's been a bit. I mean, so far back, I guess actually that was before season 8 of Game of Thrones had even premiered, right?
Yeah,
so,
there was nothing. They were still waiting on them filming that.
We were young once.
We were young and full of hope.
Although I guess, it hasn't been that long. I guess there hasn't been another George R. R. Martin book since, so it's not too long, right?
That's true. He did Night Flyers on Netflix. I think it's the last thing he's done.
Yeah, you had 33 battle reports that you've had up now for A Song of Ice and Fire, and things look like they're going strong. I would love watching your games.
Yeah.
What's kind of your general thoughts on where A Song of Ice and Fire is in your scene?
In my fishbowl, in my fishbowl, I would say that it has certainly. So what was interesting was if we take that timeline in 2018 and we think about the releases that came out, they were really consistent. 2019 through that summer at Gen Con, right up until about this fall, and they built a ton of steam locally. People were excited with the new releases. The 2 big local game stores that stocked it were able to get a hold of it. They worked out some of their distribution issues across the border here, and it got a lot of momentum through the usual natural sort of miniature wargaming build. They did a good job of, I think, parceling out their releases where you had starter set, but then you backfilled a range. And this is just me putting on my business hat, having worked in miniature wargaming for a long time. When you do that kind of a rollout, right? We had 2 factions at start. They backfilled those factions for the first 2 months, and then, like you said, November 2018, they dropped Night's Watch as a pre-release and a preview. Some people got box sets, started talking about them. It came out in January, I think. And then but even when it came out, they still backfilled units into Lannisters and Starks. And they did a really good job of continuing that process of every 3 months a new starter came out, because it was Free Folk, I think, in March.
Yep.
And then they backfilled Night Watch through that. So you got crossbows. Summertime, you got Heroes 2. And then you got Targaryens pre-released in summertime. I'm sorry, I've completely lost track of time because it's March. It's April 2020. It's we're 4 months in 2020.
Time doesn't mean anything anymore, right? I mean, what day is it? I don't even know right now.
This is what it feels like in a black hole, I'm pretty sure. But anyway, that process, I guess, just to make a short story long, was really healthy. And so I think that really helped. If you started back that first fall in 2018, you felt like there was always a little bit of something, no matter what faction you played. And they were really smart too, just scattering in neutrals that were for everybody. So everybody, even if they hadn't had something for their faction, kind of got a taste of unless it was Free Folk, whatever. But
hey, whoa, what?
Sorry, time out. But
I think Owen is our emissary, I think, in your group, right? He's the Free Folk player.
Yeah, he's the Free Folk player. Actually, no. So is Clarence, but Clarence is just.
All right, Clarence. Who could forget? Yeah.
But Clarence is a skew player. And so his Free Folk army will never be on camera because it's just 900 units of free point guys. Well, sorry, he's also massively regretting that because he was the guy that hunted down and bought 4 boxes of great axes and then painted 3 of them, and then was immediately full of tears and woe and regret when that whole change happened. but anyway, so yeah, so the tournament seems pretty good. We had like I kind of tried to kickstart that hobby champion thing, and I ran 2 major events. I won one last fall at Sword and Brush, and I won that first one that we had. But other people started picking up kind of the banners in their local stores, which is nice, and the store owners supported them because they were selling product. And that kind of lasted up until this last fall, I guess, when the usual things that happen. Companies have hiccups, and products starts to like peter it and stuff. But it's got a pretty solid base, and I think regardless of like any kind of like just we don't have stuff to sell hiccups, the store owners are pretty happy with it, and there's no decline in the player base. I think it maybe stopped. It leveled off the growth that was having, the exponential growth, where people are like, hey, cool, rank and point game, and it plays fast, and it really passes that Christmas morning test of like we just open the boxes and play. So I think the exponential growth may have like slowed down in the last like 6 months, but there's certainly like no drop off in the player base. People are still enjoying it, and they haven't like there's nothing else that's come out in the same niche. You know what I mean?
Right.
So there's really nothing to distract people from it, and there's been no other real major game releases either.
Yeah, and I always wondered if I know it's based on the books. I do always wonder if like the way season 8 went, not everybody was thrilled with how that season of the show went. If that had any impact on it,
I don't know. I don't think that it did, because I think that those people were the people that were just lucky lose anyway.
Yeah, that's true.
If you look at a Facebook group as being like the size of a community, I don't think that's true. I think maybe half are active in the community, and half of them are lucky losing people who are like, I want to feel this out. I want to see what it's like, and like I want to see what the community's like and how the people are.
We're starting to get a lot more players that are just jumping in because of the game mechanics.
Yes. It's I think the thing it has going for it after the last like year and a half, 2 years, because we're coming up on 2 years this fall, is that we're about 18 months in, and it's being played in real life. And that's a huge like win for a Kickstarter game, where the big barrier between Kickstarter and real life is stores can't make any money off it typically.
Right.
But this time around, they got proc like right away to stores. Most of the Kickstarter stuff was available. I mean, the Hand of the King stuff wasn't, but that made the Kickstarter backers feel good. They had something special, which I think was okay.
I thought they were going to put that stuff out way earlier.
No, and I think that's important. They're really smart about Kickstarter from the point of view of, we know that the people that do back this stuff early need to remain feeling special, right? And so I think that the fact that Matt and the Rock isn't out yet still, everything else I think is out. It's just Matt and the Rock. But that's still something that makes those people feel relatively special. And so that's a distinction, because like you've gone almost 2 years having a unit in your army that nobody else had. And it's a cool ass unit too. Like it's like probably one of the most iconic things in the lore of the game, right?
Although by the time he does come out, I think there's gonna be so many counters, he'll just slide right in perfectly. Those first few games you played when it was just like your starter set, and then you like threw in that one like Hand of the King unit or something. You're like, he does what?
You just dumpstered people. He's like, okay. He just auto kills my what? Yeah, but now he looks at a giant. The giant just like backhands him off his horse. Or he gets too close. He gets too close to Mira, and Mira just explodes into the trap or something.
Yeah. So I think it'll be. I think when he does come out, I think it'll actually be in a very very in a good spot.
Well, the game, I would say that we're in a really interesting place, because mechanically speaking, the game is still, and I don't want to, we can talk about this maybe a bit more afterwards, but I'll just kind of, mechanically speaking, the game is still great. Like the Targaryens themselves, I think, I mean, just from like, I put my game designer hat on, I don't know how in development they were before the first 4 boxes came out, because there's been so much shifting to the actual like of the game, and so many core rule changes so far in 18 months, that I feel like they had a very flexible design schedule. Like they designed probably the first 2 factions, put them out, and we're like, let's see what the world does with this.
Right.
And then from there the game's kind of like growing. I don't think I guess what I'm saying is, I don't think they printed cards for Targaryens 2 years ago. I think cards for Targaryens are probably getting printed. They've still been playtesting that as they're printing closer to.
And what do you think the impact of that is? What are the implications of that?
There's assholes like us that break the game.
Oh, gotcha.
That's it. Like they're smart enough as a manufacturer, because they do their own manufacturing,
right?
To know that whatever they make, and this is the thing about them having War Council app, and actually something I think they may have taken cues from Cortelli on, is that they can update in real time their assets.
Right. Yeah.
And there is a certain danger to that because people, if they're going to really go that route, they really need to just stop printing cardboard altogether and just force people to use the apps, because but the problem is the board game company and the more do that, the board game doesn't play it, because there is a disconnect. It's actually happened at 2 of our so far. We've had people come to the event thinking units worked in a way that they don't. Well, how would you know?
Yeah. Well, honestly, when you go to their website, even it's like hard to find it.
Well, that's it. And so how would you know? How would you know even if you just learned to play in the store?
Well, gee, Ash, you know what they could do? Right. They could listen to the On the Table Gaming podcast, where we discuss all things A Song of Ice and Fire.
But that's, I'm just saying, is
right.
You end up with an assets disconnect. So either those assets need to have some kind of like marking on them with like an edition number, or saying like, make sure if you're event organizers need to take it on themselves. There's lots of checks and that kind of thing, but they've evolved their game in 18 months. Like let's put it that way. You don't typically see a halfway through an edition change.
Right.
12 months in, like that's a pretty aggressive like edition change. So I do think they're developing on the fly a little bit. And you see things like what's that new character that literally creates a new tactics board zone?
Oh, like
that's
unprecedented.
Yeah.
Yes.
The Warlock, like that's an unprecedented design thing, and that's because, and I'm really excited about that, because that sets a precedent of, they're not just going deep into existing tactics zones or creating replace effects, because I don't like replace effects. I think replace effects devalue the NCU board in general. Additional effects tend to be better. I also don't think that the NCUs that should even be as prevalent as they are, be 5 points. There should never be an NCU that costs as much as a ground unit, period. Well, because, and I'll make an argument with, but anyway, so I guess just to round off my like, how's it doing here? I think that people have been excited about the amount of development that's gone into it. It seems like it's dynamic, lots of new units have come out for everybody. And so it had some exponential growth over the first probably 12 months, and 18 months in now, we're seeing a pretty healthy player base. I mean, right up until everybody got thrown into house arrest.
Yeah. This is like unprecedented situation here.
Yeah.
And especially for this sort of genre of hobby, right, where it's literally about getting together with people, with pushing miniatures around.
Well, and also, unfortunately, a company whose entire product line is made in China.
Yes. Yeah.
that's all. That presents just a logistical hurdle that I really hope they don't have to suffer a lot of like damage from.
Yeah. At the same time, I mean, they've been trickling out the hype. A lot of the product got out. I know the Unsullied Swordmasters have been out. So it seems like up till then, those made it. We'll see what happens to the next couple months, once that gets delayed. Yeah, I mean, what do you think of the sculpts and stuff? Do you feel like I can't ever tell if it's just me in my head, like envisioning it, but it seems like the sculpts are getting better, disregarding like those weird Melisandre nose things people were talking about. Some of their boxes, her nose like isn't fully formed.
That's a QA thing, not a sculpting thing. That's just the fact that if they're making product fast, they're not checking their casts.
God.
But I think
like Stark Bowman to like anything that's come out in the past few months, and it's like, holy crap! Like, these things
that's just experience. That's just experience. It's just people dialing in what they want. Well, also, even one of the things I've noticed is that the scale is a lot more consistent. You don't have giant, huge, like, ridiculous Lannisters next to like dinky small like free folk who are like all anemic and like, these are supposed to be the giant terrifying. They're supposed to be the giant terrifying Viking people, and like they're squaring off against Joe Farmer from somewhere near Lannisport, who's been given really expensive armor and told if he loses the helmet, he's gonna have his children's hands and feet are gonna be cut off. You're literally just here to stand in the armor. That's all you're supposed to do. You're holding the armor up and walking it around. You can imagine that's what the Lannister training for the like. You are armor or just a mannequin.
Maybe they're just padding the armor, right? That's why they look so big.
Just stand here and point the spear towards the charging horses. That's all you do.
So now we're up to 7 factions, right? So, I know you play a lot of Starks and especially Night's Watch on stream. You play Boltons. I mean, you play a bunch of forces, but now that we're up to, 7 factions, do you have a favorite faction?
Well, I think it's funny because I think the tactics deck tends to dominate that conversation. There are units that are individually powerful, but I think that most of the factions live and die off their tactics deck. I do think that the Starks and the Night's Watch core tactics decks are probably the most powerful in the game still. And you can actually see that because their cards have been blended into other factions.
Right.
So both Free Folk and the Targaryens pull some Stark cards because they're just amazing cards. And the difference is you've got 2 or 3 really powerful, core tactics deck cards in the Targaryens and the Free Folk. But then you look at the Starks and the Starks have all.
Right.
Right. Like all put together. I would have said the Lannister core deck was really good too, but I will say that not the reduction of morale into the game, but the fact that it's been flattened, where you can't spike hard. You can't spike it anymore, because that was the Lannister deck was built around spiking morale and just putting so much of an influence on the die roll that you were just taking your morale stat in casualties typically when you fail to morale.
Right. As a Free Folk player, I remember those days.
Because the problem was the worse your morale stat got, the worse you actually took casualties from morale. So your morale stat wasn't just what you needed to roll to pass; it was actually, when facing Lannisters, it was your casualty count.
Oh yeah.
And so,
hit me with anything, I will take 8 wounds on my Raiders, and that's really the 9 with at least the minimum. You did 1 wound, maybe.
That's it. Well, you come apart and just the clouds of arms and legs. You know what I mean? Like the whole thing just
damn farmers. What are they feeding those people outside?
Well, it's not even. And then the negative gameplay experience of that is it wasn't even farmers. It was a blonde lady sitting in a castle somewhere 700 miles away.
Right.
That had a thought. You know what I mean?
Put a crown on her
head. Yeah. She wrote a letter or something. She mailed one of your. she mailed one of you a pink finger. Like, we'll send you the rest of the hand later, and the unit just ran away. And so, yeah, I think that's definitely an okay thing to do. I think that the variable morale thing is okay, but the problem is left with, because and just circle back to my point about updating gameplay assets on the fly. The one thing they actually can't update is the tactics.
Right.
So unless they can, but because you physically need those cards.
Well, then you have to print it out, and then it would look like a.
Not even that. It would make the card. It would actually make the sleeve fatter, and there's some real those are the things they'll have to print new ones of if they go in and change the tactics. And so I'd say that all of those 7 factions right now, and part of it is the wide and deep mentality. The Starks, I'm pretty confident the Starks are done. I don't think there's a lot of units you're going to see come up for Starks anymore. We might get 1 or 2 more units over the next 3 years, but was kind of it. There's not really what else could you imagine them coming out with? The fat guy in his that fight at the Trident.
I guess I could see some. I could think of some combats. Car Starks, maybe.
I'm sure waiting on the
hero boxes. Man.
Well, you might. You might get more Tullys. You might get a Tully box, hero box, but that's just going wide. That's just going deeper into something. It's not going wide.
That's true.
The problem is that at the end of the day, regardless of what your NCUs are and your attachments are, the core infantry, right, the things sitting on the table, are what actually dominate the conversation in a game. How they interact with each other is influenced by the characters in the NCUs and the tactics deck, but the core competencies of your tactics deck, which means the 6 cards that you have base, right, of your 20 card deck or whatever. They are the core competencies of the faction, and then the actual the other ones. And so they're adjusting the units a bunch. We might see more changes there, but I don't think you're going to see a lot of things come out. And I think they've gotten a lot more judicious on messing with neutrals too, because the problem is to give neutrals at once.
Yeah,
and you just see that with the long sordid history of Michael Chanel's favorite unit that started off being just the best thing in the game, and then has slowly wound its way around to, but if we keep it like this and we give people a cavalry attachment, Khal Drogo makes this kind of ridiculous, or it can't be available to everybody and also be amazing.
Because every time they go look at their army list, they say, well, why would I want to take any of my stuff when I could just take the neutral?
Why would I bother? I'm not going to bother. I just take a neutral unit instead. And so you end up with this overshadowing that becomes unfortunate. And I'll be honest, I would have just made the Bolton Stark. Just make them Starks and give them the Craster thing.
Right? Yeah.
That's what. If
And
I
that
was
would
gonna
literally
choose one
just be
thing,
a one card change, saying like it's like a no coin beyond the wall card. It's just like, hey, listen, that's just their rule.
exactly, right? Just make them Starks. Just make
So
them
do you think down
Starks
the
and give them
line,
a.
like you have such an experience, like a depth of experience with wargaming, and at some point every game is going to have so many units that you're just like it's like too much. And
Well,
then you
that's
see
why
like
versus deep.
creative themes and things.
Every game gets there. It's unavoidable.
Do you
You
think
can't.
that's like an inevitability here where they're going to maybe that would be an idea to?
Yes. Well, it's there's two things that they will slowly run towards, and they're going to run towards the fact that they're playing with a licensed product, and they're eventually just going to run names, right? Like George is going to die someday. There's not going to be any more books.
But then they're going to find a chest with just like a bunch of scrolls with names on it. I think he'll make his own name generator. We'll find his stats.
It'll be like Christopher Tolkien or some shit like that, where it's just like, it just goes on. Nobody knows what the hell's going on after a while. But that's the inevitability one, and the inevitability two is eventually you reach a consumer exhaustion where people stop caring because they're overwhelmed, right? And so there is, unfortunately, like, unless you start updating, and what happens then is you move into like phase 2 of the life cycle of a game where you get updated sculpts, you get resculpts, you get a whole new edition change. Yeah, you can use your own. Look at all these great new models. And you've watched Games Workshop do that for years, right? Where like, it functionally, I could use my Space Marines from 1989, no problem. But I don't, because they're 1/3 the size. And while I have like an affection for them, not nearly as cool as Space Marines from 2020. So like, it's that sort of like that progression where the you move into new phases for a game. And at 7 factions, I think we're not nearly there yet. Like, there's lots of new stuff to come out, and there's you've gone just the very tip of the iceberg on Targaryens and really on the Baratheons as well.
Right.
I think we've got Greyjoys, to see at some point. We've got. I don't know if the Greyjoys are going to be neutral. I don't know. I don't know how you slot they're a thing, but I don't know if there's enough there to make them. Like, I want like Black Lauren and Theon, and like I want stuff, but at the same time, like, I don't know if it's greedy to try and make them their own faction, or if you swap with somebody else.
Because they're going to go, but I think they're going to go full faction, unless maybe there's like a weird neutral mechanic where it's like you can play. Well, yeah, I don't know, because they're going to do a starter set in Q4 of this year, and they're going to try and do a new distribution model where I guess they release the starter faction with like a few core units all at once.
Yeah, just to make them playable. Yeah.
And you think that's a better way to do it than like kind of teasing it out over time? I mean, it definitely makes it more playable right at the start. We do have so many neutrals, though. I mean, maybe do you think that
it's a good experiment? I think what you need to give them. So the problem is that until you. So here's my. I'm cool, Minnie. I'm Dave Doust. People making this game. Dave Doust is a wonderful. Dave Doust. Anyway, he's
lawyer.
He's a super nice guy. No, like he's just like, he is genuinely just a great human being. I really. But the question I have to ask myself is, if people take the starter set and kind of and we didn't quite get the mix right, you know what I mean, and it's not fun to play with, what is the threat?
Oh, interesting.
To me selling those products later on. So here's me putting my business hat back on, right? So just releasing that box, if you were to go on a scale of Free Folk to Night's Watch. You know what I mean? Where Free Folk were, oh shit, you can't use anything outside this box.
Right.
You know what I mean? You've got nothing except for what comes in this box, and half of it is just hot garbage with the unit mixing. You know what I mean? Like, who put Tormund Giant Save on the table? Who put Jor on the table? You know what I mean? Like at all. Like Mormont never saw the table.
No, never.
And I think Tormund's just like, yeah, and Tormund's like, ooh, I make these Raiders real good. Like, why would you put them in? And so like it's this like dice toss of, did I generate enough player interest with this release that they're going to be excited about the stuff later on, if you're smart and if that's what you're thinking about. And so I think what you do is you look at that as, what could we put it alongside this box to widen the amount of playable options? And so even just like if you did core box plus Heroes 1, and maybe whatever the core unit is in that box. So like, let's say if I was to go back in time and redo Free Folk, if you did Free Folk, Heroes 1, and maybe either just more Raiders or something different, like let's say Followers of Bone. Right. You know what I mean? What a different.
Oh God, yeah.
All of a sudden. Or even better, imagine you did skin changers in Heroes 1.
Oh,
Where like skin changers drastically increase the value of trappers and raiders.
So I think that's what they did with Baratheons, because they did Baratheons Hero Box instead of doing Baratheons Unit Hero Box. I mean, the unit was the Wardens. That's not like a real new unit.
But the Baratheons desperately needed that because the Baratheons had an inbuilt divide, right? A lot like the Free Folk, where you literally could, like, if you think about every other previous box leading up to that, everything mixes. There's nothing excluded by virtue of who is leading the army, and you had half of the NCUs in that box not work with the other half. You know what I mean? So like you were basically forced into army lists out of that box, where you're now playing with army lists, but you don't feel like you have player agency because I didn't get to choose what I took.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And so giving you that mix of like, here's at least 7 different options. What it does is it just increases the possibility of people feeling like they have agency, being excited about exploring their options, because that's all miniature wargaming is. Miniature wargaming is people tinkering, right? It's tinkering with lists. Like Chase, if you were to add up the hours of how much time you spent thinking about playing a Song of Ice and Fire versus how many hours you actually spend playing a Song of Ice and Fire, and I'll be honest, like I am the living embodiment of plays miniature war games. Like I probably play more miniature war games in a year than any other human being on Earth. Like I don't know anybody else who could possibly play as much as me. Like it maybe.
Well, dude, when you have videos coming out almost daily, I mean, it is daily. I think. Do you have to take a day off? No,
but I do have I have something coming out every day.
Sunday is the as the tool, the widgets.
It was wonders, and so like it's a podcast, and so it's this like even then. I still probably spend more time getting ready to play, thinking about playing, talking to Owen about projects we want to work on, talking to guests who are going to come in about a project we're going to do 6 months from now, than I do actually physically playing. Because, and that's half of that is the virtue that I do everything myself. Like I paint everything myself. I make and train it. But the other half is that nobody does the physical action of playing a game as much as they do thinking about it and tinkering. And so if you're a business and you want to give people actually the most satisfaction, is just give them more toys to tinker with, right? And so I think you get a more likely jump off into.
I guess that's where people get frustrated then, right? Is like when they get so I think the Baratheon players, their hero box, they're probably the most frustrated because when they struggled with the game, they lost to their buddy who has got a full army and they just have a starter set. There's not as many ways they can tinker with it to be like, oh, if I do this, it's solved.
Yep. Well, and it never feels good to lead on the neutrals either, because the problem is it just takes the same neutrals. Like it was the old Varus versus Varus.
Yeah,
I had to take Varus to counter your Varus. Oh, I have to take and now it's these other 5 point. It's these other 5 point NCs. I have to take Walder Frey to counter your Walder. Right, like I think that if there was one thing that I think they need to just completely go back and re-examine, it's just the NCU.
So I mean, I was going to ask you, other things that you'd like to see improved in the game. So if that's the route, then so the problem is that the 5 point NCUs you think skew it too much, or
no, I think that the problem is that you have NCUs replacing tabletop units. It's a weird thing right now where I stand back and I do the matrix thing where I don't see ones and zeros anymore. I just see the nature of the blondes, the brunettes, and the redheads. It's what I see is I see points moving off the board into nothing. It's sucking agency units off the table, because there's only 5 spots on the typically, and the Targaryens are going to change that, but typically there's only 5 spots on the board. You have this removal of player agency to a more restricted playing pool. And if I was to go back way back into the beginning, or if I was just to strip back a Song of Ice and Fire and make a wish list for 2nd edition, it would be that the NCU point pool and the Army point pool are just 2 separate. Make it so that you play 50 point games and you get 10 points to spend on NCUs and you get 40 points to spend on.
Yeah, that makes sense actually.
And so all of a sudden you can have 5 point NCUs because they are really powerful at what they do in particular. But if that guy is going to eat into half of your NCU allowance, you know what I mean? One, that the tactics board stops being so crowded. right? Because
Right.
you're only able to take, if you're taking 2 5-point NCUs, you're only getting 2, period. Right. And
Right.
and the 4 and 3-point NCUs find their place, and it just becomes more of a, okay, so this is a separate battlefield.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And you accept that it only dominates this amount of the game. It'll actually make assigning point values to the NCUs easier because you no longer have to worry about the siphoning off of battlefield potential.
Yeah.
And it means that battlefield potential point values become easier too, because the problem with assigning either of the point values right now is their influence over the overall outcome of the game.
Right.
And you do not score points as quickly, except for in 1 or 2 cases where random objectives through NCUs. You only score points. So you want to have a certain amount of like influence as a game designer over how many activations sit there, how many wounds total sit there. And the problem is the players right now have a real tendency to mess up that math by drawing activations off the table on the tactics board.
Right.
And not even by choice. Because right now the whole Varys Walder Frey thing means that if you don't take them, you just can't win. Right? So you're ending up playing like 25-point games because you have to take these guys that are jockeying for position on the tactics board. But if you don't take them and you don't activate them first in a round, like I can't remember the last time I played a game in the last probably 4 or 5 games I played where we didn't see Walder Frey and Varys on 1 or 2 sides, and we didn't have to get them down as
right.
Right. And so like these first activations, you're not even making battlefield moves. You're getting your Walder Frey onto the throne, or you're getting, you know what I mean? Like you're doing that thing that you have to do to make it so that the rest of your battlefield turn can happen. And that's not an engaging gameplay experience because you're forced into making choices that remove player agency by virtue of how the units work.
Right. Yeah. I definitely see what you're talking about there. You know, I don't know if it's as bad as like you have to always take Walder Frey. Yeah, I suppose as a free folk player, but free folk, like when you're building lists and you know you're going into that, it's like, well, I just know I have to have enough units that are spread out and crappy so that I don't have any one play, exactly. Like power play unit.
Your army by nature,
right,
just turns him off. Like it doesn't matter.
Right, but then if you're not going to take Walder Frey or Varys, then you essentially have to be building your army around him anyway.
Yep.
So you might as well just take him.
Yep.
Yeah. Exactly. I think that makes sense. Gosh. And the point pool, I think that would also make it really interesting for balance in the future as well. Man, you are like your experience in this genre is so deep. I think you laid that out like very compelling. I'm just like, there's no more like I'm ready to discuss about it because I'm just like, yeah, no, that just makes sense. Very airtight. So, you know, but on the flip side, I think, you know, for people, if you're listening and you're just getting into the game, don't worry. Like, you know, the game's still evolving. There's new characters coming all the time that are going to threaten these. You know, sometimes that might be an increase in this sort of escalation. I think we're seeing that with the Lady of Thorns being able to shut off one. Yeah. But then does it come down to every faction just has to have a NCU that shuts off another faction's NCU?
Well, I think what we're seeing that should give everybody some optimism if you're new or old to the game is that the game designers are designing stuff a bit closer to the cutting edge of the game, and they're not afraid to try new shit. Like just creating a new zone on the tactics board, the Warlocks is a huge thing, and so that's like that tactics board is that zone is bananas. Like if it releases as it is, that is the craziest tactics zone. Like just those 3 effects, like they're all bananas. Like all of them are crazy. The number 6 effect is absolutely insane. But because it's a dice roll, you know what I mean? Like it's you're looking at the double-edged sword of, if you take this guy, it gives your opponent this ability too. You know what I mean? So for 50% of the game, you have to deal with this on top of potentially being able to inflict.
So for those of you at home that maybe don't remember what the House of the Undying Tactics Zone does, it's if you claim the zone, you roll a die. On a 1, your opponent discards their hand of tactics cards. Then they may place up to 2 condition tokens on one of your combat units. If you're Targaryens and you've got like Unsullied, you're not going to care about condition tokens anyway. On a 2 through 5, your opponent discards the top 2 cards of their tactics deck. And then on a 6, search your tactics decks for any 1 tactics card and place it in your hand. Then shuffle your deck and then roll again.
It's just great. Even the 1 is just been like, could you imagine being an Xbox player and being like, okay, I've got 12 cards in my hand because of the draw that I have, and then your opponent just goes,
especially Night's Watch players,
and your opponent just goes, throw your hand away, asshole, and you go, and like your arm
right.
just falls. Like
Or
you're like
just
there'd be nothing you could do.
the Lannisters even hanging onto your counter plots, and you're like, I need this card for this or adaptive methods that are, just
The one is almost worse than anything else. Like I'll take conditions. I don't give a shit about that. Like, if, like go ahead, throw a panic at me. I'll lose guys if you have to throw away like a 7 card hand for like for probably 50% of the armies in the game right now. I'd say 3 or 4 to 7. That ends the game. Like right there. If I was a Night Watch player and halfway through the game I had to dump my hand, I'd probably just lose because the army is built around me having those cards.
Right.
Yeah,
I don't know.
But anyway, I'm just saying they're being brave with their game design, and who knows? Like that zone probably won't make it to release exactly like that, or if it does, if it's already printed, then it might change in like 6 months because nothing's honestly even the core mechanics of the game right now aren't sacred. Like they're willing to.
What's weird is we don't see on a lot of competitive lists, like we don't often see people really leaning into the RNG stuff as much.
No,
but this might just be good enough that. What is the real downside here?
Well, opening up a 6 activation, there's so many powerful free NCU commanders too. I mean, Howlin' Reed is a top shelf commander.
You're right.
What's it called? Roos is a great commander. Almost any faction. But especially in Lannisters, when you can lean into panic too. There's a lot of like things that just widening the tactics board is gonna be crazy. I was surprised it didn't replace a tactics zone, but I guess it couldn't do that. Because if it did that, it would X out some abilities that are native to like tactics cards and tactics decks in different factions.
And I haven't, we haven't had people really playing games with this yet. I wonder if this will lead to more of what you were kind of concerned about. We're going to see more people like putting points into NCUs, or if this will, kind of spread out the zones more and maybe make it so that. I don't know. Like, is this going to alleviate some of the NCU tactics pressure, or is this going to be like even more of an arms race to get the zones?
But think about this. Think of what other large buildings in Westeros or in like just that area might end up with this same game mechanic. Like I could very well see a neutral area who's an assassin. You know what I mean? With House of Black and White as her like tactics zone.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Where like you end up with a
heck, even just like the Casterly Rock, and it's a new version of a Lannister hero, or
you gotta when we get Kevin, man, Kevin Lannister, the hero we needed, not the hero we got. When everybody forgets Uncle Kevin. Uncle Kevin's gonna come rescue us.
It's Dickard or whatever his name was.
Fucking Dick. That's right. Like the B Lannisters, the Lannister B squad. Because that's what we're gonna get into. We're gonna get into it's box 3. It's gonna be that'll be like Heroes box B. It's the B squad that nobody fucking cares about.
I hope they do that. Actually, I really do hope. You're like all characters are just like who are these?
Who
guys?
is that?
It's like it's Carl. Carl.
Oh, it's this one's led by Hot Pie.
Oh, this is definitely gonna be a Hot Pie. People will generally be excited for him, I think, in a weird way. But
it'll be a Hot Pie and Gendry fucking tag team.
I hope it's just like skin changers, where it's just like his model and then a bunch of like pies or something random. You're just like
a bunch of different pies, or it'll be Biter and whatever the other guy's name were. The two fucking weird guys. The Night's Watch. Yeah. Or for actually no, they'd become they might actually do them for new because they eventually become Boltons. Yeah, they're all at they'll become Boltons when Roos takes what's that big castle called that's haunted?
Harrenhal? No,
Harrenhal. Yeah, Harrenhal. When he takes Harrenhal. Yeah, they'll switch sides and get rescued basically because they're all basically supposed to be Northmen. They throw with the Northmen. Oh no, they throw with the Mummers. They throw with the Bloody Mummers.
That's why when you talk about like running out of names, like I feel like this is actually one IP where like they got a decent ways to go still. If you're pulling out
I mean the fact that Hote even has a miniature already, I'm like, really? Right. That guy got a miniature?
Or
really? I don't have a cold hands yet. You got a Hote? Jesus, what's going on? Yeah, no, I would say the new players. There's plenty of adaptability from the design team that seems to be willing to try new things and enter into new design space. So I'm not worried about that. I think that keeps people interested. But every game eventually is going to hit a wall, at least and just life cycle stuff. Because that's just what happens.
Yeah,
it's not.
Speaking of games in general, then is there a game besides A Song of Ice and Fire, the miniatures game, that you think people should check out? Like, is there any recent things that you've been looking at? I've been
It's such a
looking
weird
at.
thing to.
I
Sorry, go
kind of
ahead.
missed the big push on this one, but there's Last Days Zombie Apocalypse.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've heard of that one.
I have heard of that one.
The
Yes.
designer,
Well, I mean,
what's his
you're
name
talking about
again?
you're talking about indie games now. I mean,
Sure.
indie games in general, um, are robust from the point of view of they don't tend to go anywhere. They're always going to be around, and a lot of them have like unique play mechanics. Last Days is getting talked about right now because we put out the solo and cooperative play for free.
Yeah.
As a free supplement on the Osprey website, along with the solo rules for Frostgrave. They just put up solo rules for Ragnarok, which is that how you play that game. And obviously in the world of like social isolation that we're in, there's some time to check out these indie titles, and also a lot like they're not mass combat games. It'd be hard to write an AI for a Song of Ice and Fire that wouldn't break down really quickly. But
Right.
for like an adventure game, which is like a light D&D, it's real easy to write an AI.
We actually, that was like one of our surprises we wanted to try and do, was make a Song of Ice and Fire AI, and we just gave up. It's there was no
you couldn't do it. It's the problem is that it's too. The problem is it would require two AIs. It would require a CU AI and and a tabletop AI, and they have to actually decide which one was going to go when.
And then
that's
like
the biggest
tactics
problem.
cards, and then
there isn't a way to do that.
And then it's just not the same game if you're just like, but do it without tactics cards or NCUs, and it's like, well, then
then why?
It's a dice generator. Like, what is this?
What I would do is I would just take the miniatures off their squares and play Frostgrave with them. You got a lot of.
There we go.
The nice thing about miniatures is they don't care what game they're playing.
That's
That's a secret I'll tell all you people right now. If you have a bunch of miniatures, and it's weird that like, I think maybe that's a Games Workshop thing where a lot of hobbyists who come to miniature wargaming through, the mass market, where like they learn about the Games Workshop store, a hobby store, they see like the most popular thing being played, is that they get that idea that there's like a right and a wrong way to approach your toy soldiers, and the secret is your toy soldiers don't actually know you can do anything you want. And I just watch my son. So if I walk into like my den right now, just sitting on my kitchen counter, if I walk into my den right now, I turn on the light, and my son's got one of my Loki Battle Mats dungeon books open, and there is Tormund Giantsbane and a was it Lady Val and what's his name, Mance Raider, along with a Ultramarine and a couple of Hero Quest orcs.
Those free folk are gonna jump that Ultramarine, man. I don't know.
And they're having some kind of messed up dungeon adventure right now, because these are all just miniatures that I gave him, like a bunch of Hero Quest models. These are all the things I gave him, and that Quest. Right, like, but that right there is kind of like the unsaid secret of miniature wargaming that I think if you figure it out.
Jeez, how do people's kids sign up for your distance learning system? They're getting a real education there. That's a Hero Quest.
Yeah, man. Well, this is all just all the One Piece pre-assembled miniatures that I have lying around that I'm not going to use. You know what I mean? So Owen got three sets. And so he doesn't need all the heroes,
that at least you let your free folk be played with your kids, and you're not like cutting them up to put on your base.
No, he has a bunch of Night's Watch captains, the Swarm Brother captains or whatever. It's just all the extra miniatures you don't need. You know what I mean? Like you're gonna end up with doubles.
Yeah.
And Owen will just give like my kids basically anything that he's not using. And they have imagination games for them. And so just to like circle back to that whole like indie thing, is if you're looking for a way to enjoy your model collection or your toy soldiers that you have, can't play. There's tons of options out there for games that just use fancy miniatures. You know what I mean? And the Song of Ice and Fire miniatures are some of the nicest, I would say, single piece fantasy miniatures out there right now. We're planning
people that buy them just for D&D.
Well, that's it. We're planning on using those 4 miniatures for D&D. Actually, the Tormund Giantsbane we're going
to
to look like me. My daughter's going to be Lady Val, and my son's going to be Mance Raider.
Awesome.
Right. So those are the 3 people that we'll use in our D&D eventually.
It's phenomenal.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that's it. Like, so Last Days is just I would say there's probably more people that tried it Last Days. Just to circle back to Cool Mini or Not, with Zombicide collections, than any other thing. You know what I mean? Or Walking Dead All Out War collections, because they have these miniatures, and it's just another fun, engaging, light role playing game way of playing them. And so that's an interesting thing right now. that I think that people are out their hobby time, and there's lots of stuff in the indie market out there. I'm playing I'm playing a game that Mike Hutchinson, who wrote Gaslands, is working on right now. It's in like alpha and beta development, called Perilous Tales, and it's basically just, so the way he described it, so he wrote it to basically be like a 1950s like monster movie miniature game where like every episode it's played so like you never play as the bad guys, you have to face a villain. So it's like the final act of like monster movie where like Dracula shows up, Wolfman shows up, or a mummy shows up, or whatever. And I basically, because I'm an idiot and I can't not look at everything through my own lens, I was like, oh, so it's the X-Files. And he's like, and he's like, and I was like, no, it's like, I'm gonna play this game and I'm just gonna make it the X-Files. He's like, I painted a bunch of miniatures to basically be Mulder and Scully. It's Agent Anderson and Agent Duchovny, and like the the way more competent people that usually fall around, and like monster encounters already, and it was super fun. And it was just me literally just going through big boxes of the studio and finding like, oh, this guy kind of looks like David Duchovny, and this kind of looks like Gillian Anderson, and here's some like cobblestone SWAT team miniatures that I have, and what kind of monster movie villains do I have? So the first one I did, weird like demon with like rat swarms and like little like weird, like it's like backup. It was kind of like a John Carpenter's Prince of Darkness thing. And then the second one I did so far is basically the ghosts from Pulse, but it was like in like a campground. Like some kids found like weird standing stone and got sucked into it, disturbed some bones, got turned into ghost monsters. And it was super fun. It played out exactly the way I thought it was going to. Mulder lost his gun about halfway through. Again, just like fell down. And Scully carried the team for like 2 adventures so far. And actually, it's been fun because it's been challenging. The AI is actually really smart in this one. In both games, in the second game, I like succeeded. In the first game, I'm pretty sure that like Skinner was basically yelling at a good week or two after they got back, and we're like, how many SWAT team guys died? Like, what's wrong with you? Anyway, yeah, no, I think that's a unique opportunity right now. Is if you've got a miniature wargaming collection that you're looking at, you don't know what to do with, go dig through all the more punk rock stuff that's floating around out there, because there's tons of stuff you can play that you don't need an opponent for. You can play with your kids, or that's like bite sized too. Like it's not going to take up a huge amount of space. You can just play.
Well, I was watching your last day's videos, and on Osprey Publishing, you can just pick up the PDF, the e-published book.
Yeah, I think they've sold it. They've actually sold out of the hardcovers. The first run's actually sold out right now. Yeah, the hardcover stock, but you can probably find them in Amazon. Other retailers probably still have them for a bit.
I'll do that. Then I want myself a nice hard copy too. So. But yeah, so other than that, I mean, it's been kind of crazy times. I think, there's definitely been time to do hobby time. I've actually been enjoying going back because you put out a lot of content. And I mostly watch the A Song of Ice and Fire stuff, and then I'll pop in and watch like a lot of your reviews. Just even though I don't play a lot of Games Workshop stuff, I just like hearing you talk about it. Especially, I've been really, really liking it. If there's any way to like push you to make more of this with a little bit of influence, I love those White Dwarf read-throughs you do. I don't know what it is, but it's just because those are all the ones you've done so far have all been before I actually started getting White Dwarfs. Right. Like I think my first was like 193 or something. So like way after you were like you have like 70s and 80s you're doing.
I think I started with like low 20s or 30s. Or like because what's funny is that those early White Dwarfs, they're not even about miniature wargaming. There's no Warhammer yet. Like it's all
the role playing. Yeah. But the thing, like, I don't know. And I'll put up while I'm painting, and it's just like it's that perfect amount where it's like you're flipping through, talking about that, the you in the corner, and then the book opening like so clearly. I don't know. But you should do more. You should do more of those.
I definitely will. I actually have. It's really funny. I think I talked to you about this before we started recording, but I've had a bunch of really good ideas kind of like bubble up for this whole like weird. I get to make stuff that like I normally wouldn't make, and it's funny because like the whole social isolation thing doesn't really change much for me because there is so much indie content, and even like mainstream content. I'm prepping to do more Blackstone Fortress. We're on 40,000 Blackstone Fortress right now, which is a great solo play board game from Games Workshop and has tons of expansions and tons of depth. And you can play it for ages. Like you can do a million different missions. I'm playing Space Hulk,
Oh
which
yeah.
is a classic like Aliens kind of style, like a derelict spaceship game from the 80s and 90s. But then I'm also playing indie games. Like I'm playing Perilous Tales, which Mike has gotten like beta. I've been recording some last days. I've been doing a bunch of like Fallout stuff and Elder Scrolls stuff through Modifius.
Oh, I saw your Elder Scroll stuff. That's
It's
really
cool as
interesting
hell.
too.
It's the Elder Scrolls stuff is one of those things too where like I'm really happy with it, not just because I like the property, but I do like the property, but because they took what they did with Fallout and they streamlined it and improved it. Took all the greatest parts of Fallout and made an Elder Scrolls game that plays really, really. Anyway, but yeah, but I guess the sort of like the roundabout thing I'm talking about here is that I'm getting to do a lot of what I want just because I don't have to like work to somebody else's schedule, and I'm doing it with guests or with Owen. It's like I'm not trying to like also kind of do what they want to do. I'm just kind of like I can just make what I want. And someone was saying the other day I should do a. Well, I didn't actually. No, I didn't talk to you about this. I should talk to someone a while ago. I did a whatchamacallit, a chat a little while ago, and someone mentioned that I should do a playthrough of some of the old Choose Your Own Adventure books from the 80s.
Oh my, you 100%
live.
should.
I should do it live and have like the audience like influence what I'm doing. So I might go to my storage unit this week and like dig out some fighting fantasy novels.
Oh my god.
And try and do like a live show or stream down and just try and get through one of them and see how far we get, so we can get to paragraph. And like and I think it's like just weird shit like that. I mean, like those are the original OG single player gaming experience. I think that'd be fun. So just stuff like that. I'll definitely do more. It's funny because the White Dwarf ones I literally just did because there was no like rhyme or reason to it. I was like, oh fuck, I found this box of old White Dwarf stuff. I was like, I should show people this. Look at how crazy the cover of this is. It's like there's titties on it and like weird hookah smoking warlocks.
Yeah.
This is some Hawkwind shit right here. Like 1970 bananas, like fantasy. This is stuff your mom thought you were joining a cult that you had in your room. This is the Satanic Panic, like basically in an 80-page like perfect bound document. So yeah, there'll be more of that for sure.
Heck, even I remember, I mean, I was much later. I think we've got a little bit of an age difference, not too much, but I just remember even with the Warhammer stuff I had, having people come over and be like, why does this space person have like a Nazi relic symbol or something?
Yeah, exactly.
It's like,
because they're space fascists. Because the entire Imperium is a terrible place no one would want to live in. Like there are no good guys in 40K. The closest thing to good guys in 40K are the Tyranids because they're just animals. they're just sharks. They don't feel anything. They're just consuming the galaxy. It's like being mad at a praying mantis. Yeah, exactly. It's like being mad at a praying mantis. Like no one's a good guy. They're all terrible. That's the irony. Good guys in 40K. Whoever you're playing as are terrible people and they do terrible things, and you shouldn't want to be like them. There's no good like high
almost as bad as those Bolton players in A Song of Ice and Fire. I guess neutral players, but there are guys that play Bolton.
Hey, it's just like Futurama told us. What would make to command gray, Kif? Like, those damn neutrals. What does it take to make a man neutral, Kif? The whole like idea though, I think of doing just more weird kind of like content, like I think people enjoy. I should do more. I'll be honest. The biggest change, I guess, through this whole socialization thing for me is just my kids aren't being in school, so I've lost the free time of when they're with me, and they're basically just doing. I'm basically teaching them. Mm-hmm. We're doing almost 8 hours a day, whatever the online learning and stuff is. Well, it's a pretty light like curriculum, but the problem is there's 2 of them. You know what I mean? So that doubles the amount of like, running around time. So like
differentiating it is.
I've got friends. They have like 3 girls, and that's just like a crazy amount of like work. They're in grades 3, 1, and junior kindergarten, and like just like the difference in curriculum and how work they have to get done. Like that's a huge like just amount of like time that parents haven't been used to doing things for. So
and trying to do all their other stuff too, right?
Well, that's it. Yeah, and try to keep the house going and make dinner and break up fights and all the usual parenting. BS you go through. So I think that there's tons of things I want to do, but right now I'm budging my time just to make sure that I'm still getting the basic content.
Yeah. Well, you're doing an awesome job, and I love your channel. And I just thank you so much for everything you've done for the Song of Ice and Fire community. I know, especially in the beginning, like you were the only guy making battle reports,
Yeah,
and
man.
you're still going with it, and it's like it's just always great to see that. I was actually thinking one of these times I might try and make the drive up there. It's a bit of a haul, but maybe I'll see if I can come up there and we can get a game in at some point.
Yeah, man. Come north of the wall. You can come north of the wall.
Once
man.
all this passes by, when I'm
That's
so
it.
stir crazy, I'm like, I gotta get out of here.
I think
Jeez.
that's gonna be a lot. Actually,
It's gonna be a while.
There's gonna be a lot of people that want to like do something they couldn't do. I think that's everybody's making that list right now. It's the top 10 things I'm gonna do when I get done being stuck at home or being socially isolated. I want to do like the only thing I'm working on right now is all the usual summer we used to like. I want to go to my cottage and I want to like go canoeing and like just do like outside stuff.
Is that like further north in Canada? Is that like
yeah.
Canadian?
There is a further.
Isn't it the edge? There's civilization beyond you. I thought
we live in like America Light down here, basically in Southern Ontario, and then I'm only like 20 minutes from the border. Like I'm right across the border, so it's not far. Just like upstate New York. As if we go another.
Don't you do it? Don't you do it? Don't insult Buffalo like you did last episode. I don't want the emails.
They have fabulous food, and they have a B-level hockey team, and they have.
Here it goes. Oh no.
No, the Sabres have heart. That's what's important. I can't talk shit about any hockey teams though, because the Maple Leafs are the most garbage hockey team in existence. But yeah, no, the cottage country right here is probably like 5 or 6 hours north. And it's beautiful. Yeah, it's Canadian Shield, like the big Rocky escarpments, and a bit like if you've ever been to Illinois, been to the Jericho State Park or something like that, Pillars State Park, with big pillars and stuff like that. It's kind of cool because Illinois is actually further north than Buffalo is.
Yeah.
It's hard because we don't think about as being like this weird like squiggly line. It looks like a heart monitor. It actually goes up and down all crazy. Michigan and Illinois like way further than I am here. Way further.
When all these social distancing passes, hopefully sooner than later, hopefully get some vaccines and stuff, but it will meet up at some point.
Play some games for sure, dude.
Sounds good. Well, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Until next time, I hope you get your miniatures on the table.